Tonight, Republican 2024 candidate Chris Christie responding to those calls from people who believe that he should drop out of the presidential race. CNN getting an exclusive look at that ad here tonight. Eva McKend is in New Hampshire with details. Eva, obviously these calls have only been ramping up as we are getting closer to what is happening in New Hampshire after the Iowa caucuses, the primary there. What is Chris Christie saying to these people who say that he should get out of the 2024 race?
You know, Caitlin, it's telling that he feels the need to address these concerns directly. And what it speaks to is the anxiety among some Republicans to really coalesce around a single Trump alternative as we get into these closing weeks here before these pivotal contests in Iowa and New Hampshire. But in true Christie form, he's saying he's not going anywhere, that he is the only candidate in this contest, in his estimation, that is willing to go after Trump directly. Let's listen.
Some people say I should drop out of this race. Really? I'm the only one saying Donald Trump is a liar. He pits Americans against each other. His Christmas message to anyone who disagrees with him? Rotten hell. He caused a riot on Capitol Hill. He'll burn America to the ground to help himself. Every Republican leader says that in private. I'm the only one saying it in public. What kind of president do we want? A liar or someone who's got the guts to tell the truth?
So Christie, Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, many of the candidates have very aggressive ground games here in New Hampshire. We'll have to see if Haley, on her way here to northern New Hampshire this evening, a bit of fog here delaying her, Caitlin. But we'll have to see if she addresses this directly. She tends not to go after the other candidates directly. Core to her message is really that she is a new generation of leadership, and that is something that seems to be resonating with her supporters here. You speak to them, some of them say that they voted for Trump in 2016, voted for Biden in 2020, but are ready to vote for a new candidate entirely in 2024. Caitlin?
Eva McKend in New Hampshire. Stay warm. Thank you for that. I want to bring in CNN political commentators Jamal Simmons and Alice Stewart. Alice, this is a seven-figure ad buy, we are told, by Chris Christie, where he's pushing back on people who say that he should get out of the race if Republicans truly don't want Donald Trump to be the nominee. What do you make of this new ad tonight?
Well, good for him. Look, no one's cast a vote. We haven't even started the race to 270 yet. And I think we need to hear from the voters before people start saying who should drop out of the race. And I think that will happen as we get to Iowa and New Hampshire. But good for him. I just reached out to the governor and he said, look, the ad really speaks for itself. What he's been saying all along is that Donald Trump is a liar. He said in the past he is unfit, and calling out Republicans, specifically Republican challengers in this race, who will say privately that they feel Donald Trump is a threat to democracy, but aren't willing to say it publicly. So this is true to form for what Governor Christie has been in this race for, really pushing it to Donald Trump for what he sees as a threat to democracy and being able to call it out. How much will that message resonate in terms of primary voters and caucus goers? We'll certainly see in a couple weeks, but you got to hand it to Christie. He has been consistent on this issue and certainly is not backing down.
Well, Jamal Simmons, I mean, the argument from anti-Trump Republicans who don't want him to be the GOP nominee because they believe he could lose to President Biden, who obviously you used to work for inside the White House, is that if Chris Christie stays in the race, he detracts support from people like Nikki Haley. If he got out of the race, that support would likely go to someone like a Nikki Haley, obviously not Donald Trump if they're supporting Chris Christie. Is it true that the Biden White House, as Nikki Haley's been arguing, would be more worried about a Nikki Haley as the Republican nominee, that she would be more electable?
Look, it's absolutely true that Nikki Haley is the best political athlete running on the Republican side. I mean, she is just a much better athlete in terms of how she performs, the ability to communicate with people. Here's the thing. She's running in a MAGA party. She's got to adopt MAGA positions. She still won't even take Donald Trump on most of the positions that he has. It's just a new generation of leadership call that it is she's trying to make on people. So I think the Biden White House is, sure, Donald Trump is an easier case because you already know what you're running against. You've already got it all basically in the can. With Nikki Haley, you got to come up with some new plays, but she's still running the same old MAGA playbook, and that's not going to be one that sells to the American public, I think.
Well, Alice, I mean, it is true that people like Chris Christie and others have said, these other Republican candidates aren't doing enough to call out Donald Trump. As the New York Times puts it today, they're saying that her bold strategy to beat Trump is to play it safe. But in today's Republican Party, can you be an outright Trump critic? Can you be as critical as Chris Christie is and have a successful endgame?
Well, we all know the reality of the lay of the land is you have to be subtle about it, but you also have to be vocal about it as well. You have to make sure and deliver the punch directly to Trump, but not do it in a way that's going to alienate his base, because there are some former Trump supporters that are looking to turn the page and move elsewhere, and someone like a Nikki Haley is a good alternative. As Jamal said, and as we've said, she is a younger generation leader looking for a more optimistic vision. And look, I think she has done quite well in terms of taking it to Trump. She has gone after him for adding to the debt. She's gone after him for some of his positions on foreign policy and the fact that he's been a loser. Her big ace in the hole right now is New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu, who I'm sure we'll hear from tonight. I spoke with him on the radio this morning, and he said, look, Nikki Haley is perfect, certainly for New Hampshire, live free or die state. She's about individual responsibility and reducing government. But he says she and he are going to show that Donald Trump has been a liar, he has been a loser, did not build the wall, and certainly added to the debt. So we're going to see that.
Alice Stewart and Jamal
Caitlin,
Simmons. Jamal, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, they got this ad that's up, that's running, and they placed it in Boston, which means they're going after kind of independents, more moderate Republicans who commute basically to southern New Hampshire back and forth to work. And I think that tells you they don't have necessarily the voters they need in the Trump base. And the question is, are there enough of those independents and moderate Republicans to make up the 15 or 20 point difference she has with the former president?
Yeah, it's a legitimate question. We've seen how well Trump is polling there in New Hampshire. Jamal Simmons, Alice Stewart, thank you both. We'll be back in just a moment.